Okay, so here's our fly for today. Just a classic woolly bugger. And for this, I typically use a 3X long hook, but I believe these are a 2X long. But they will still work. Pretty much anything you got laying around. I like a long shank on them, on woolly buggers. Not really, you just don't want to use a short shanked hook. 2X long, 3X long, 4X long, whatever you got. Now to start, we're gonna get it in the vise, obviously, and we're gonna use a little bit of, I think, 035, maybe 030 lead, just to get a little bit of weight on the fly. So, 8, 9 wraps of that stuff. Get that back end kind of mashed down as you can. My hands are probably all in the way. And we're gonna leave this a little bit of distance from the eye. That'll come into play later in the fly. I'm gonna try to kind of leave this area alone so we can make a nice clean head at the end. So for this, I'm actually using 140 tan. You can use almost any color you want. You can use red or yellow to make an accent, but you won't see any of the threads. So start that just behind the eye. I'm gonna leave my tag end on this. I'm gonna just kind of loosely pull that over the lead and lightly make wraps around it. Once I get to the back of that lead, I can catch my tag end and really secure that lead down, so it's actually not going to go anywhere on us. And you can put some super glue on this if you want. I'm not going to, but it's not a bad idea. And cut our tag in. All right, so first material, the woolly bugger. We're going to stop our thread just shy of the barb, if you can see it on the hook. And we're going to grab some woolly bugger marabou. If you use blood quills, typically I think I use blood quills. They're a little bit longer fibers, but since the woolly bugger's in the name of this one, we're going to go ahead and use it. And all it really means is they're kind of a little bit shorter, fluffier feather, where the blood quills have kind of a longer barbules to them. Pick out a good one out of here, or two maybe. We're gonna clean this up and kind of pull these shorties off the bottom, just so they don't get in our way. Now, we're gonna kind of push all these fibers to the top of the feather. And what we're looking for, I typically like mine a little bit shorter tailed, but typically you're looking for a shank and a half length of a tail. So that's, if we start here and then again, it's about a shank and a half. And we're gonna tie that in right back on top of the barb. Make some good wraps on that. Now we're not going to wrap this all the way back up over the lead. Just check on that, make sure that's not slid off to one side or the other on you. I'm going to bring my thread back up right behind the lead, and I'm just going to wrap over the top of that marabou. We're going to stop right there with the marabou, and all that's going to do is help fill in the body, try to kind of even it out for this big chunk of lead we put on here. Now, because I can't just tie a plain woolly bugger, I'm going to put just a little bit of flash in the tail. And this is just some pearl flashabou. You can use literally anything you want. Crystal flash, mirage, crinkle flash, anything you want. Even if you don't have to, but it's just what I do. I'm going to double that one strand over. So I have 2 strands now. I tie it on this side of the hook, on this side of the tail. Make them just about as long as the tail, maybe a little bit longer. And as I wrap back, I'm going to grab this end that should be looped, if you want, pull it towards you and across, and then I'm just going to pull it down the other side of the tail. Now you can kind of see these ones are real long. We'll chop those off right there at the end of the tail. And we'll add our wire. Now, the wire I'm using isn't super crucial, but this is a small copper. You can use, depending on the size of the fly, you can go brassy or medium even if you want to. This is more for support or structurally support to try to build a stronger fly. Tie it on my side of the shank. Wrap your thread down right till it meets the tail. And now we have some green chenille. I typically use dubbing, but I think the original pattern called for chenille, so that's what we're doing today. And just gonna pick off a little bit of the fluffs at the end so you kind of get to the core of the chenille. We want to tie that in right at the back. And from there, we're gonna go all the way up to the front. Again, just leaving kind of this area alone, not quite to the front of the eye. And we're gonna make tight wraps. One really tight wrap around that back tail, pretty much straight around it. And now we're just gonna continue tighter wraps on the way up the shank, kind of close wraps. If you open spiral this, you'll see the kind of underside of the fly. We don't want to see that. So now you can see where that lead kind of added this bulk here. I like that in the fly. I got one little flyer here. And that's typically what happens. It likes to try to jump off there on the end. That's fine. And we'll just catch that with the thread. Get a couple good wraps on it, pull it back, a couple good wraps in front. Cut it off. Now, we are almost done. This is olive schlappen. I don't have the bag for it. You can use Chinese strung saddle. It's done all the time. I typically like to use a schlappen just because I like the webbiness of it. You just try to find a feather where the barbules are gonna match the size of your fly. You're gonna tie this one in a little bit backwards. It's gonna be opposite. You're gonna tie it in at the front of the fly with the larger barbules being closest to the thread. Now, I'm gonna size this up. I like them pretty big, so I'm gonna probably go somewhere in there. And you can peel off all this bottom stuff. Double check that, make sure I got that. It's a little big. Maybe somewhere in there. As long as I have enough to actually hackle the whole fly. I'm gonna trim my stem, tie this in. And I like to double that stem back over just to help so I don't pull it out while I'm trying to tie. Now you can fold this feather. You can either do it as you turn it or you can do it with your scissors. Doesn't really matter. You're kind of just prepping these barbules so they lay down the way you want them to on your way back to the end of the fly. Now from here, I like to make one solid wrap up front, one full wrap so that the fly has a good collar, good looking collar anyway. Maybe you can even go a little more if you want. Now we're gonna start kind of spiraling to the back, and my barbules are kind of, that's okay. Current, and as you're stripping this or even dead drifting it, they're gonna lay down the way they should. Now, assuming I don't lose this, I can get to the back here, and that wire we tied in, I'm actually gonna catch this feather with the wire. It's kind of hard to see, but see if I can get these hackle pliers on here. You can kind of see there's the end of the feather. I'm gonna catch that with the wire. And now that I've got it caught, I can take that out. And then we're just gonna kind of weave these up through the body. Don't get too hung up on trying to not trap barbules. We obviously don't want to trap and you lay them down, but the more you try, the more you end up either catching what you can't see and obviously missing what you can, but don't get too hung up on it. I need my hackle pliers for my wire now. You just kind of wiggle it back and forth as you're going through those fibers. Should be able to work your way through. And get to the front. Make some good wraps around the wire. And that wire's there obviously to help you tie the fly, but it's going to help create like a stronger fly, because that's going to stop that feather from breaking. If you're fishing it and constantly fisher teeth are getting to that stem, they're going to break that feather, and then your fly is kind of done. So that wire is just going to kind of help hold it all together. Make some thread wraps, clean up the head. This is a pretty big head, but it's okay. It's a streamer, so. And this, I've been having issues with this whip finisher, so I'm just going to whip finish by hand. But use the whip finisher that you like. Put a 5-turn whip finish on it. This is what I was talking about. You can use like a red thread or an orange thread maybe if you want. Kind of put an accent on it. Now I'm just going to take some head cement, clean this up. Make sure this thing stays together for us for at least a few fish. Now I need to cut out this back feather, and you're done. That is pretty standard, basic olive woolly bugger. You can fish it as a dead drift, fish it on, like strip it as a streamer, works as a leech, maybe a crawdad. Some guys I know even fish them for stoneflies. So